Welcome to the Shine the Way podcast. I'm your host, Jake Blake, and I'm honored to be joined today by Brian King, the head football coach of the DeSoto Wildcats. Coach King has been the coach at DeSoto since 2013. He has been the United Kansas Conference Coach of the Year 4 times in 2019, 2020, 2022, and 2023. He was the 2017 KFBCA and Chiefs Coach of the Year. He currently has the number one winning percentage in the UKC conference. He's 41-5, which is an 89% winning percentage. He's got 6 conference championships to his name, 4 of them for the UKC, 2 of them in the Frontier before they joined the UKC, 6 regional championships, 1 sectional championship, and one of the coolest stats that I got was that he was a 2022 inductee into the Onega, hopefully I said that right,
Yep.
Athletics Hall of Fame. And then, of course, he's married to Audrey and has 3 wonderful children. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it.
So let's just jump right in. I want to jump back to when you were a young Brian King. Obviously, you're a football guy, so I'm assuming that was a no-brainer. You did play football growing up. Besides football, did you play any other sports?
Yep. So I was a football, basketball, track, baseball kid from the time I was a seventh grader to a senior. So I love the change of seasons. I love playing a lot of multiple sports, and definitely love football. It's probably my number one. But I loved everything. Yep.
Yeah. Now, Onega are they 2A?
Yep.
When you were
I'm
there?
assuming is Minneapolis 2A where you came from?
So Minneapolis, when I was there, was 3A. They
Yep.
have since bounced to 2A, 3A, and it's kind of bounced back and forth because of the population and the different thing. But I think right now they're currently back up to 3A, but for the most part, it's been 2A, 3A throughout.
Yep.
So, one of the things I've told my kids, they're at a 5A school here, and you have a number of kids that can fill the various different sports. So you don't necessarily have to do everything. That's like, I was a football player when I was there, and I was built, my son James,
Yep.
I would spit an image. That's
Yep.
not a football body. I mean, it could be, but
Yeah.
I wish I would have had the opportunity to play soccer because I could run like he can. And
Yep.
the only time I like to hit people is when they didn't see me coming. And it, that's not really fair, but that's the only way I'd like to do it. So
Yeah.
growing up and playing all those sports, do you feel that going from football to baseball to track to basketball and vice versa, did that benefit you playing multiple different sports? Just the way you play football, then you go into basketball. Did football help you with basketball? Basketball help you with baseball? Did you see any balance there?
Yeah, I think it does help you. I see it a lot with our kids now. To be completely honest, with you. And like our kids that play basketball, play football, like they're good in coverage. Like they can cover a flat and know how to play in space. Our kids that play baseball can flip their hips and play a ball in the air, and they can field a short hop. Our wrestlers can push pull, and no one can cut them. Like it definitely helps football. And I think the football piece is just, I think it just made me probably just a better competitor a little bit for me personally. Just made me a little better competitor in those other sports I played. But I do think there is some carryover that helped me by playing all those sports for sure.
Yeah. During your time, did you have any sense back in that time that you'd want to be a coach, or
You
was it
know,
just focused on playing?
yeah, it's a good question. I do remember being at practice one day, and I had a great experience. I love sports, but I loved my coach Ron Lee in high school. He created such a good atmosphere for us, and had such a huge impact on us. So I'm sitting there on the field and love the game of football, love being out there, and I was thinking like I just remember thinking in my mind like I'd love to do this, um, just the rest of my life, be able to work with kids and coach and be part of sports. And part of it was I love sports, but part of it was just kind of realizing the impact that he was having on me as I was going through those sports. And I could list other coaches in that as well. But just had a phenomenal experience playing with Ron Lee there at Onega, and hugely impactful on me. And I watched how he's impactful with a lot of kids around my age and the guys older than me. And he changed a lot of lives. And I was realizing that as I was going through his program, how impactful he was on me and challenged me every single day. And I respected the heck out of him. And I think I realized at that age in high school that I wanted to coach the rest of my life.
So beside your football coach, was there anybody else that in any of the other sports that you took any like,
Yep.
okay, I like how this guy's doing some of this coaching on the basketball court or the baseball field? That Did anybody else impact you that way?
Absolutely. And it started pretty young. So one of the first things I did sport wise, I was a lifter. And it's funny because I was a very active kid. I was out riding a bike, climbing trees, and my mom was just trying to find somewhere for me to put that energy. And it's kind of funny. She goes looking for gymnastics something because I'm always just flying around doing all this crazy stuff. She didn't find one, and she found an Olympic lifting club. And so I joined Olympic lifting at the age of 7. And the guy that coached that sport in our hometown of Onega, his name's Gene Gilsdorf. And he is a phenomenal faith-based individual. Like, he's been serving Onega's community since like mid 70s, and he still does it today. He does it for free. And we'd have a lifting club there, and we'd compete in clean and jerk and snatch. We'd go to local meets, but we go to the Junior Olympics every summer and compete. And he invested a ton into me and a lot of kids in our community. And I think that it paid off huge for us. It's just like developing that fast twitch muscle fibers and developing some power as a younger. It was huge. But he was hugely impactful because he did things the right way. Like I said, he was faith-based. All these people I'm going to mention today were service-oriented people. And that's what he was all about. And I still talk to him to this day. And he was I think he was an Army Ranger. I hope I don't screw this up. Like, he was a very disciplined individual. But anyhow, he was hugely impactful on me. He's one of the first ones I'll mention. And then I had Chris Flattery, was a junior high basketball coach for me. I think he played at Friends University. Awesome individual, lots of energy. He'd have us practice, and he'd run the floor with us every night for an hour and a half after we're done, and did things the right way. So those are just a few, and there was more. I could list off guys and that impacts on me, coaches that impacts on me. But one thing that's aligns is they were all service-oriented individuals that had a big impact on me and the youth in Onega growing up.
Yeah, you mentioned 3 different levels of coaching there. You had your and in 3 different areas. You got your basketball, football, and your lifting coach. You yourself, I've seen you've done all 3 personally. I've seen you coach some basketball when your son was younger. I've seen you obviously run the weight program and all that entails there at DeSoto, and then your football program has been a huge success. One of the things I like to do is try to reach out to some people that know you well and get some quotes. And I was last minute on this, but thankfully a couple of guys came through, and I'm going to go first with Coach Gaslam, Mark Gaslam, longtime assistant coach. I believe he's been there since the beginning with you.
Yeah, and so I got here in 2013, and he coached in head football coach in 2013. But the first year I was here, I think, want to make sure this is correct. So Tommy, 12, 11, 10, 9. My first year was 09. March was 08. So he was here at DeSoto a year before I was, actually.
So you guys have been together on this football journey for many years. And so I reached out to Coach Mark and got a quote from him. He said, "Brian is the ultimate leader. No one is more invested in our kids and community, and that goes beyond football. While many head football coaches who also serve as the head weights coach will develop plans that support their athletes that others can follow, Brian creates a sport-specific workout that supports all athletes in all sports. He takes great pride in the improvement and the success of all DeSoto activities, not just football. Brian has championship-level expectations for all his athletes and coaches, and every single person is held to that standard no matter what. No one gets a pass because they are the most talented, nor looked over because they aren't a varsity contributor. Brian's mission as the head football coach of the DeSoto High School football program is to develop young men of substance and character through the game of football. We find the level of success in our program in the kinds of husbands, fathers, and employees our student athletes become after they leave our program. He's the best, and we are lucky to have him. I'm a better coach, teacher, husband, and father because of Brian King." And I felt like everything you were just saying that you learned from both your football coach, your middle school coach, and your weightlifting coach, Mark summed up in his quote about you and what you bring to the DeSoto program. And that's why I was so excited, because I remember specifically talking to Ben Crable about his son Pierce, who went from a little kid to somebody that was just ripped. And he said that was 100% thanks to the weight workouts that you provided him. And you weren't trying to get him to bulk up to be your middle linebacker. You knew he was a basketball kid and also a golfer. And so you designed certain things that he could do to benefit him in those programs. And that's really impressive. Because you could be very self-serving and say, hey, the easy thing is here's what works for my football players. So we're going to do that for the tennis people. We're going to do that for the cross-country athletes. We're going to just do that for everybody. And that doesn't serve them. So So that leads me to my ultimate question of why I like to talk to coaches. Why do you coach?
I kind of talked about it earlier. And first off, I got to come back and appreciate Mark's comment. I gotta say this really quick. I cannot thank him and the rest of my staff enough for that. They're the reasons we've had the success we've had. I got to go back to that. He's been here with me from day one. Him and Joel Famert and Lynn Hoffman, and you can talk about Eric Bell and Todd Hessong and Jamel Townsend on that whole crew, and Tom Byers and how phenomenal that group is. But Mark's been with me from day one, and without him here, we would not have had the success we've had. So I greatly appreciate that, and I think the same thing of him, and I'm greatly appreciative. But I'll go on to your next question, but I had to say that really quick because I greatly appreciate that. But I coach because, like I said, the impact that the coaches had on me growing up, 100%. I talked about. You're going to hear me reference this guy repeatedly. But as far as who I am as an individual, who I am as a coach, it's a direct reflection of the people I talked about that I played under. And Ron Lee, my head football coach in high school, he's why I coach. And I love the game of football, but it's just a game until you take the adversity the game creates and you use it to shape young men and challenge them day in and day out. And Coach Lee did that, and it completely changed my life. I can't tell you how many times I went down the road, like the road of life in college, where things might not go my way, and I was like, maybe I'm going to quit. I maybe think about quitting, but there's no way I was going to quit. With the things he ingrained in me, when things got hard, he just kind of instilled those things. And the biggest thing he did, and this is huge, you can talk about philosophy and culture, your program all day long. It has to be emulated day in and day out consistently by good coaches. And that's what he did for me for my 4 years at DeSoto, at Onega, excuse me. And he did not just that. He coached from 1977 through 2004, I believe. He emulated those values from 77 to 04. And he poured into every kid that walked through that building. And he had high expectations for himself, but he had high expectations for everyone around him. And he's going to hold to that standard. And I love those guys. So that impact was huge on me. But then the other trend, and I'll kind of get into this, is those coaches I talk about, they are service-oriented individuals. They weren't focused on their own trajectory. They're focused on investing in others. And I think that impact from those coaches on me growing up was 100% why I decided to coach.
You mentioned one of the things you like to do, or you should do as a good coach is here's what our program stands for, but then you have adversity, and how do we react? And I'm a huge fan of the junior class. That's my son's class, and I grew up Ben Parks, Will Morton, Brady DeArmond, and I don't want to leave anybody else out, but that junior class, a bunch of those guys, I've had the opportunity to coach them in different sports and just watch them grow up into the young men they are today. And I've known Ben Parks and his family since he was little, and I was blessed to be on the sideline during the first Baser game. It turned out not to go our way. We were very close, and it just didn't work out. And one of the things I've always, with Ben specifically is his body language is a big thing with him that I've always watched growing up, because I can tell when things are going good and when they aren't. And that's one thing I watched this year, and I couldn't tell. So what you guys have done and his parents have done with that young man has been amazing to see the change and transformation in him as a quarter QB1. I mean, everybody looks to you. But the whole point of this story is you guys had to rely on a sophomore, Rafa Fernandez, to come in and guard an all-state senior wide receiver. And he did a great job throughout the game. But on the last play, he got beat, and that guy scored a touchdown. And you could just tell Rafa's a competitor, and I love that about him.
Yep.
As I was walking with the guys to put the stuff away after the game, I saw Ben pull him aside, and I have no idea what he said. But I have a feeling that whatever you've been leaning and pouring into Ben, you and your staff, Ben was then taking and pouring into Rafa to let him know that, hey, that was just one play. We had many, many other opportunities to win that football game, and it shouldn't have come down to that one play. And so we're going to need you down the road. You're going to have a bright future. And I even, that night I texted Dustin. I said, dude, that was one of the coolest things I've seen from your son. Not him running for a 30-yard touchdown, throwing for a 30-yard. That leadership right there, that goes a long way. And that's a testament to you and to Todd, his quarterback's coach, and everybody else that's a part of that program. So anyway, when you were saying that, that's all I could think about was what I've seen from a kid that has grown up and matured under your tutelage. So
I appreciate it. He's done a phenomenal job this year for sure. That quarterback position, there's a lot on their plate, especially when you're on an option offense. And he embraced it and did a phenomenal job and didn't get too high and didn't get too low. And like I said, he's not pointing fingers. He's just plugging away and bringing people along with him and did a phenomenal job. And like I said, DB is a tough position because you get beat, everyone sees it.
mm-hmm.
As you play D line, you might be in the wrong gap and maybe not have been stands recognizes it. But if you get beat as a DB, everyone sees it. But Rob was going to just keep competing and keep his head up, and they both did a phenomenal job this year.
Yeah. So you've been very successful, and I don't necessarily want to like say you're not successful. You've got a tough thing for a lot of coaches, but I see the way you handle it because in district, just down the road, you've had another school that's had immense success as far as state championships. And how do you keep yourself grounded to the fact that, yes, that's the ultimate goal of like the way we play, right? We're competing and trying to win there. But you already said that your ultimate goal is to make young men and use the game of football to teach them about the life and the future for when they're fathers and everything. But as parents and as kids, you see that success that they've had, and you guys have had a world of success as well. It just hasn't ended up in a state championship. How do you keep your program and the kids in your program to understand that's the goal in that season? Because we try to win every game, but that's not. I guess I don't know really how to ask that question, but that's not the ultimate goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing, and I tell kids, we talk a lot about the process and about controlling things you can control. It sounds real simple, but it's not simple. Obviously, keeping your mindset in that direction, but that's really what it's all comes down is what control the things you can control. And what I ask our kids and our staff and myself, if I need to focus on how are we preparing, like this last season, for instance, like are we like talking to the kids to own the process? And I, as a coach, need to do the exact same thing. What are the things I can control? How are kids working in the weight room? How are kids working in the off season? Are we preparing hard throughout practice? How's our film sessions? How's our focus? How's our kids' behavior in the classroom, on the football field, in the community? Like these are things that I can control. So that's where my focus goes. Even though I understand exactly what you're saying, especially in this community where that stuff's going on. I just got to focus on here's our kids. This is what we have. How do we maximize it? And like I said, the primary focus on all of our kids is developing men of substance and character first and foremost. I always tell parents, like, we're going to learn to do things right in the classroom, in the community, work hard in the weight room, do things right, and then do these little things right. Then winning's going to become a byproduct. But winning's never like, okay, that's the primary, that's the main goal. Developing men of substance and character is the main goal. Like I said, winning has become a byproduct of that at DeSoto High School.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's an excellent answer for a terrible question because I didn't know how to ask it. I knew what I was wanting to get out of you, and that's the answer I was hoping to get out of you because I knew that's where you would go with it. Because I've seen it. I've seen you guys year in and year out. You don't put all your eggs in this game's the one that matters or that game's the one that matters. You guys are here's what we do day in and day out every time. And and I Coach Lindsay explained the offense to me because I don't know much about football, but I was like, okay, so what is Ben looking at every time? So he's walking me through the steps. He's like, if we run that play 5 times, there could be 5 different outcomes, yet we run it the exact same way. It's just based on what does this guy or this guy or this guy do. And it's like, okay, that makes more sense to the consistency. You just got to keep going because first 3 plays it may not, but that 4th one, if that guy makes one mistake, Will Morton goes 80 yards or whatever it might be. So, what is your process throughout the season? Obviously, you said it's a process, and you go through a process and every day. But how do you prepare your team for the second game against Baser? And if you win, you go to the next round of the playoffs. Or so, how do you prepare for that? But also, in a situation like that first Baser game where we thought we had the touchdown, got called for holding, came back, and then we ended up losing that game. And tough. So how do you handle those 2 types of situations where you prepare for that big game, but maybe the big game doesn't go your way, And also, what if it does? How do you still get ready for that next day?
Yeah, so I'll do the first one. How do we prepare for just a big game? Then I can be a pretty boring person to interview because it's always gonna go back to the same thing. Like I think our kids get so wrapped up if you're playing a big game, if you're playing a Baser Linwood or you're playing a Mill Valley, they know who you're playing. They're so amped up and ready to roll. I do my best to try and take the focus, like, not kind of off who we're playing, on what we like. I talk about all the time. What is the process? I want our kids focused on that 10 seconds in front of their face and what they need to do to prepare right now. Like we might lengthen our team script. We might add a film session in the morning that week. We might do some little things here and there that we need to extend our prep. But outside of that, I want our focus put on us. Because when our kids' focus is put on just being the best version of you that you can possibly be, we do great things. I don't want my kids pressing and trying to do too much. Like, oh, this is a big conference championship game or this is a big rivalry game. I got to do something outside of what I typically do. No, I need you doing what your job is to the best of your ability. And I try to get their focus there. And again, that's easier said than done. You get in there and you get wrapped up in the emotions of the game, what's going on the scoreboard or whatever else is going on. And then I tell our kids, if you ever get your minds there, I want you to hit reset as fast as you can and take that 10 seconds in front of your face. And that's going to be a recurring theme that I'm going to keep telling our kids, is just own the process, control the things you can control. I was a kid, and the reason I do this, James, I was a kid that was so wrapped up. We talked about Onega High School. I took so much pride in that community and that program. I want to be the best I could. My focus was on, I don't want to lose the game sometimes. Or what's the outcome going to be? Am I going to let this people down? And when I was doing that, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, I remember my sophomore year, I shouldn't even share this. I remember I was being this, going to be starting tailback, and I played corner the year before as a freshman, but I'm back there, and it's like, now I'm the guy. And my coach listened to me in the pregame, and I swear I'm almost hyperventilating. He just kept looking at me like I need to take some deep breaths. So I was not good at this. So I try to get our kids focused on, hey, slow down. What is that? What do you need to do on this play? What do you need to do right now? So that's where I always try to get our kids focused to, and they get tired of hearing it. But I want their minds to work that way. And we've been in some tough games this year, and I know we get wrapped up on things going around us and the scoreboard and this, that, and the other. And it's like Piper was a good example of that. We're down 14 on Piper this year, that athletic group, and at halftime, that was a discussion. We just got to regroup on this play, one play at a time, plugging back into this. And our kids shifted their mindset and came back and won that thing. But that's how they need to do it. So I take the focus away from big games to the task at hand, all the best I possibly can with those kids. They know who you're playing. They know when there's a big game coming up. I just want them to focus on what their job is. So that kind of answered your first question.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the next one, you talk about when games don't go your way and you have setbacks, would be the next question, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question too, because I think the first one, you talked about Ben demonstrating this earlier. The first thing you do is you be positive with kids, because their dobbers are already down. They're harder on themselves than about anybody. So get their dobbers up. Find any positive you possibly can take from that game and to grow from it, and be positive with those kids because their dollars are already down. So that's the first piece. The second piece, you got to instill this in kids. And I got this from Larry Weimers. I was at Emporia State where I played football. And Larry was our veteran coach. He was at Clay Center for lots of years, and he'd been around the game for a long time. He talked about, guys, we live in a society of blame. When things don't go right, we want to point fingers and find somebody for why things did not go right. And I think that's the next thing you got to talk to your entire team about is just, hey, we're going to own this. We're not going to point fingers. We're going to move forward. And our kids don't do that, but that's something you're going to have to tell people when things don't go right in a lot of programs. Don't point fingers. Just own it. Mm-hmm. What can I do to improve and move forward? And the third piece I like to this, talking about with kids, is I always reference when things aren't going well, the 2015 Royals. And the kids are getting to the point where they're too young to remember that the run those guys made in 2015. But what they remembered is if there was an error in the field or something negative happened, that's such good chemistry. The first part of that is, give the guy a pat on the butt, say, hey, keep your head up, you're going to be okay. But the most important piece of this is you got to pick them up with your play. As a team, we got to have a heightened sense of urgency. I got to be more physical. I got to get this momentum reverse and go in our direction again as fast as I possibly can. So I preach that to our kids as well. Just again, don't point fingers, and then you pick that player up by a pat on the butt, but heighten everything we do, because sports are games of momentum. That momentum's now moving this way, or your record, your mindset is now taking a dip. What do we have to do to get back here? And you got to pick it up. You got to heighten everything you do.
So before I get to the point of how do you keep your team ready to play next week after a big win, obviously you have a wonderful coaching staff, and I'm very high on pretty much everybody that I've met from your coaching staff. I've actually interviewed one of your guys, Coach Vieira, the great wrestling coach that DeSoto has. How much of that keeping kids up, keeping them focused, do you rely on your senior leadership, your just the leadership in your kids? Because the one thing I've always found is if you can get kids to take some ownership of leadership, sometimes they react better than. So if Ben or Tanner Career comes to a kid and says, "Hey, I need you to do this. Let's go. Let's pick it up," or Coach Townsend comes and does it, they might take it better from the player than the coach, just because the coach is always doing it, right? Your whole staff's doing that. But when the coach or the player comes to him, and we've seen you know, we've seen Mahomes and Kelsey and them do that to some of the players when they get down. How do you get your kids to do that? Because in high school, year after year, and in everything, but you got a whole new senior crop next year. The juniors are now seniors, the sophomores are juniors. Do you guys lean on them, or do you just let the kids kind of their own leadership style come through on their own?
Good question. I think that honestly, I don't know if there's times we'll go to our good leaders and go to them to go to different kids to help get them going in the right direction. Believe me, we go to those kids individually. But I think the biggest piece is if you have coaches that are demonstrating it every single day of what that leadership looks like, what our communication is going to look like in negative situations, they kind of learn and figure out what the expectation is and how we do things. And I think that's a big thing. Talk about Coach Vieira and Coach Townsend and some of my staff. I'll be completely honest with you with that too. Some of my staff members never played football. Okay, so when I'm looking for staff members, I can teach you the game of football. I'm looking for personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about Coach Vieira and Coach Townsend played football, obviously, but Coach Bell was a basketball coach, but he relates really, really well with his players. He motivates them really well. His message is good to them. They look up to him. And Coach Vieira is the same guy. So I think sometimes you get coaches in your program that demonstrate the values you want demonstrated and are going to communicate things the right way and pick kids up and be positive with them. Then your kids are going to start picking up on those cues, and that's going to be the message they're sending to those kids as well. So we will go to our leaders and say, hey, it's time for you to pick these kids up, be a great leader, and demonstrate these things. But if you got coaches, we talked about this Coach Lee earlier, that demonstrate those things every single day as your kids start to catch on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I didn't mean to shortchange you, because I knew you were an Emporia State guy, and we were gonna talk about that. But let's just go ahead and jump in. So you played football there at Emporia State. When you say you've got a stud player, Jaden Lang, last year. Let's just use Jaden. That's current one. He's currently playing at Central Missouri. Did you playing at the high level of Division II football, does that help you when you've got kids that are interested in that next level? Do you beat off okay, so here's what I went through, so here's what you might see? Like, how do you use your background as a college athlete to help Jaden or some of those other players that want to go play?
That's a good question. And I was at Emporia from 2000 through 04. Had a great experience. A lot of kids that play in the MIAA have a great experience. I don't know how to answer this completely, but the first thing I would tell them is going to be one of the most humbling things you'll ever do. You're going to be used to being that guy in high school that gets, like getting all those carries. Then you're going to go from the guy that's now on scout team, and you're going to have to make a 2 or 3 year plan of how am I going to get on the field. So I kind of warn them of that ahead of time. I'll also tell them, hey, you're going to show up with 40. I think at Emporia, I showed up with 40 plus guys. I left with like 11, something like that. It was like, you'll be surprised. I go, just stick it out, grind. Because if you can stay out that first semester, all those guys you came in with, 10 of them will be gone because they're going to get discouraged. So I just kind of the first thing I try to tell them is just keep your nose to the grindstone. And what I take pride in with our kids last year, we had 20 something kids, or like 20 or 21 kids playing college football. And what I'm proud of is those kids didn't go have a signing day and then go to camp and then come home 2 weeks later. They started and finished their seasons, because I know how humbling that sport is and how challenging it can be. We had some kids that I went and watched. Jackson Miller and Tyson Pretty played their last game for a Northwest Missouri State against Pitt up here at Sporting KC a while back. And the first thing I tell them is like how proud I am of them guys from sticking that out from the time they started to the time they finished. Because I remember when I was in college, I remember you're doing your camp, and your 2-day camp, you're 50 hours a week, and your regular season's 35 hours a week on top of your classwork. Plus, it's just so humbling because you're used to being the dude and you're just trying to find whatever time you can find. So I just kind of warn them of how it might be. And again, you got some kids that have different experiences. Maybe they're going to find playing time early. But I want kids to understand that, hey, whatever it is happens, just kind of grind it out a little bit. Because I think that the kids, sometimes I think back to those guys that didn't, in my experience, they talk to them later, you tell they regretted it. So I just encourage them to just stick out that adversity is going to pay off, because sometimes it may pay off in playing time. But for me, for instance, like I went to Emporia State, redshirted on 9/11, like my next freshman, like the next year when I was actually get to play on 9/11, the day the Twin Towers go down, tear my ACL. So then there's a year and a half me recover, and then I get back from playing, then I tear my ACL again. And so things never really panned out the way I wanted them to. But I'm going to tell you right now, that humbling experience, the networking, the relationships I built were so important, that, and the character I built through all that adversity was so important, that I do tell our kids to just stick it out. If your heart's there, stick it out, because there's going to be times it gets really discouraging.
So you're now entering a world where you are a coach of your kid.
Yeah.
I've done that, and I enjoy it immensely. I don't know if the kids do, but I do, because I just enjoy being around them and their friends, and helping them be the best kids they can be. How first of all, he had a great freshman year from everything I've heard. Good on him. How do you see, like, how are you going to handle that as a coach? Because you're at a higher level, like you got 100 kids every year, and that's a bad question. I don't like that question. Let's just cancel that one. How are you going to coach your son without being harder on him than you are the kids around him? Because that was something that I've grown when I was coaching James. I remember Dustin Parks and I were sitting there, because we coached James and Ben growing up, and we were watching some coaches get on these 4th and 5th graders at our basketball tournament. And we're like, that was us back in the day. Man, we were stupid. Like, that's dumb. Like, what were we doing? And so we've been able to learn. So I've watched him coach Katie, and he coaches Katie differently than he coached Ben and Drew. And I coach Landon different than I coach James.
Yeah.
Because I've grown.
Yeah.
And how because it's a competitive sport, right? And something goes wrong. Is it going to be easy for you, do you think, to not get on him harder than you would, say, your other slot backs?
100% said it, because man, there's been times I'm like, I've been pretty hard on. Here's the deal: as a coach, you sometimes just remove your filter. Sometimes you talk to your kids, and you're gonna be like, you just tell them what you need them to hear, which is, you don't want it to be harsh, but sometimes I guess it can kind of be that way. But I think, as like you just said, as I've grown and coached him through the years, I've honestly, with all of my kids, I've learned to exercise a little more patience and understanding with what they're going through. We're excited about that freshman class. Man, they got some great kids in it. One thing I'm proud of, that he's a grinder, and he's doing a great job, and proud of him, because they went through summer and the season and did not miss a single day, and got all of his grades are A's. So I try to put that stuff in perspective. But I've definitely learned to have more patience with my kids, because you said it. How I coached him 6 years ago is not how I coach him today. You kind of learn, and you said it. And I've again had my daughter Addison played volleyball. She's been in the weight room with me, and she's again now a senior, but for the last 4 years as well. But it's a lot of fun having those kids in your program. But you absolutely said it. The way I coached him 6 years ago is not how I coach him now. I learned to be a little more positive, and a little more patience.
Yeah, I mean, that's an exciting thing. Kudos to your daughters, all league UKC honors for volleyball, if I remember right. So kudos to her on that, and homecoming queen, right?
Yep.
I mean, good.
Yeah.
She's killing it. That's a heck of a senior year, start to the senior year. So hopefully she can continue that out and on into the future. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing having them around every day, and seeing them interact with their buddies in their environment. So from that, you're blessed to have him in the program, and your daughter in the weight room, and one still coming. So, how do you, for all those dads, moms that are out there being youth coaches, or even at the high school level, do you have any thoughts on how best you can be Coach King on the football field, and then dad at home? Because I will say that was the biggest growth I've had between James and Landon, is getting in the car with James after a practice or a game, and it's still just rolling, and you're all these things because you know how good your kid can be, or things he can do or she can do, and they weren't doing them tonight, whether it's just simply listening or whatever. And so my growth probably not so much on the court, it's more off the court and being able to switch from, hey, I'm no longer coach, I'm dad. Like, so if I'm getting on you now, it's about something dad would get on you. It's not like I'm talking homework or something like that. But we're not talking ball. We're not talking shop. That's over for now. Any advice on how you're handling that?
I could take some probably. I don't know. Disconnect from that, but yeah, I don't. I honestly don't know. It's a really good question.
But I mean, that's something that all coaches struggle with. Well, just even if you don't have a kid on the tip, right? You guys everybody invests time so much, and I know I've talked to a number of men and women in the coaching arena, and one of the things they always say is, first it starts with that person at home that you can come home and in your case, your wife, that's the first step, right? You got to have that person at home or person somewhere that you can lean on for support, because I know Matt Rice spoke highly. That's why he's able to do what he is, because of Heather, and Ryan said that about Tracy. So, and I know you would say the same thing. But that's something, whether you have a kid or not, just taking it home can be hard, and that's not even sports specific. That's work in life.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're a CEO over here at some company or not. So, how do you turn off a game? You go home from that Baser game or the big win. You get a big win. I know there's a tight win in Shawnee Heights, and you guys edged out, and you were the victor in that tight game. How do you kind of turn that off and relax?
That's a really good question. And again, the thing is this: you find a solution to this, let me know. The ability to come home and turn that off is hard. Because I'll walk in the door, and my wife can just read my emotions and know immediately how my day was. And like you said earlier, my wife, I could not do what I do. None of our coaches could without my Audrey, and she's a coach's wife. I can't tell you how much she's helped support me and help invest in me, and just has been there through good times and bad. And like, I think that I cannot thank her enough for that. That piece of stepping in that door and turning things off is hard. And I think I get better at it a little bit, understanding not to bring it home, but it's hard to, whether it's riding a high or riding a low. But what I'll tell you, on a Friday night, we come home, you got all that. It feels like you have adrenaline in your chest, and you break down film, and you just can't, you're sitting there and you can't get yourself to come down, to be completely honest with you. And it might be 2, 3 in the morning and you're still up, and you just got this ball of adrenaline in your chest. And so you don't really sleep on that Friday night. And then Saturday going to Sunday, you might get some sleep. But turning that off, I don't know what the solution is, to be completely honest with you. But as far as emotions and not bringing stuff home to my family, I think I've gotten better at time with that as well. But
So it sounds like, in all aspects for both of us, it's been just natural maturity as people, as human beings, as dads, as fathers, as whatever. It's just part of the process of maturing. But that also speaks to the passion with which you put into your craft of being the DeSoto football coach and a leader of young men, is the fact that you can't just necessarily shut it off like that and be like, well, it's over. Like, obviously you invest so much time into those young men, and you ask them to invest so much time into it. And so for you to have that passion and it still be driving you in, at 2 a.m, and you're replaying the game and what you did and what they did, and like, how can we get better? And so that's a coach's problem.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things that other coaches have said the same thing, that's the biggest thing, is trying to learn to come down from that high or low or whatever. But so I do have another quote. You referenced him there, another longtime assistant football coach, Lynn Hoffman, who is also doing a wonderful job with the youth program here at DeSoto. Coach King is the strongest standard bearer of our program. Coaches often say, it starts with me, but Brian lives that in ways you don't often see. He'll never ask our players to do something he's unwilling to do himself, and then some. One of the pillars we have as a staff for our program is built around community. Brian bleeds DeSoto green, not just because he's a coach, but because he chooses to. That means every student, every staff member, every aspect of what makes up our DeSoto community. It's great to be part of a team of coaches who are all on that same page, all in. And so Lynn, his quote, one of the things that both him and Mark talked about is your community, your love for the community, your love for every aspect of DeSoto High School. Whether you have a kid playing or not, you love those different sports. And that's one thing I've always told people when I've talking to them, like, hey, are you going to be going to DeSoto? And it's their first kid. I said, well, one of the things, if they play sports, they're going to run into Coach King, and they're going to run into him first in the weight room probably, but they're probably going to see him at one of their sporting events, even if he doesn't have a kid playing, because I have never seen a head coach of any program show much as passion that you do at every sport that I ever see you at. And that's one of the most amazing things I think about you, is that you could be at home. You just spent a long time away from your family doing all those hours for football. And so you could say, hey, it's my time now with my family. And you do, because I usually see Audrey right there with you.
Yeah.
Which is awesome of her as well. But just to see you, like, honestly, when we set this call up, the one thing you said, I need to be done by the game. I said, absolutely. I respect that. And
well, I'm assuming was Minneapolis, your coaches were probably at everything, weren't they too? And is that kind of a small town?
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a small, and that's why, that's what I was going to ask, is that just something that is ingrained in you from the way you grew up in a small town, small community?
Yeah, and that's part of it. I'll be completely honest with you. Like, you grew up in the small towns and you're big on that community and representing that community the best you possibly can. And I take tremendous pride in what all of our kids do. I told our band, like, if you're representing DeSoto in the positive way, I commend you for it, because I want to make this the best community we can possibly make it. And again, sometimes to fault, like some kids, they in the weight room, you'll be like, I always told people when I took that football job, because I came here as a strength coach, I was assistant football. And I'll tell football coaches this, head football coaches, I go, I'm a strength coach who coaches football. I take pride in what all of our activities are doing. And there are times that there's those kids in the weight room and maybe they're not quite doing things the right way. I'll get on them. It can be pretty intense at times. And I think they finally realize where I'm coming from. Because when they step on that field, whether it's court, whether it's soccer, or whether it's basketball, whatever it might be, or baseball, I want them representing DeSoto High School at the highest level possible. And when they don't, if they're out there and physically they've not put the work in to represent it the way they want to represent, or just represent themselves. They want to represent themselves. Like their mom and dad are there, their grandma, grandpa are there. I take that personally. I didn't get them prepared sometimes as well. I take great pride in what all of our activities are doing. But I think a part of that is just, again, growing from a small town. I'm all into this community, almost to a fault. Like I bleed green and take tremendous pride in what our kids are doing, and love going to watch. I love watching our kids play. And I hate saying this at times, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but I like when I'm watching our kids compete when I'm not the one that's in charge. I can just enjoy watching them compete, and I'm not responsible for whatever's going on sometimes, but I just love supporting our kids. And I couldn't do that without my wife. You see that I'm not there without Audrey, and I'm able to go to those activities because she loves to watch them too. And thank God I got a coach's wife that allows me to do that.
Yeah, I know she's a wonderful lady, and you are blessed for that. I'm sure, because that would be hard if you were wanting to be there and she didn't want to go. That would be really hard. So, awesome of both of you guys. I've got some quick hitters I want to get to, but before I do, I've just been really impressed with what you do at DeSoto, and I don't have a son that will play on your football team. My boys are soccer. But I still love coming on Friday nights and watching what you put out there, and because I know that those kids are going to give it everything they've got, and that's one of the things I've always taught. So in coaching the middle school now, but even in the youth, I would always tell them, especially when I was coaching my boys' soccer teams, and I didn't grow up playing soccer, so I was YouTubing, talking to coaches, trying to figure out what am I supposed to be doing with these guys. My whole thing is you have to give effort. Effort's non-negotiable. We're not going to debate that. You're either going to give effort or you're not going to play. Like, that's my thing. Effort, And that's what I love about your football program. Those kids go. Like you
Right.
said, sometimes maybe they choose the wrong gap, maybe they choose something and they go through the wrong spot, but they're going and they're going hard and they're giving effort every time. How do you, I mean, you've got a huge, like, you probably have the biggest program in DeSoto, right? Just naturally, the football program has the most kids in it.
Yeah, and again, we have about 115 to 120,
Yeah,
125 depending on the year. Yeah, it depends. Sporting programs, yes, I guess. I don't know what
it,
track has in it, but track's a lot too.
track would be close. Yeah. So, how do you emphasize and get kids I was blessed, I had kids that I wanted to watch at all three levels, your JV team and your freshman team. So I was able to come and watch all three of them. And the one thing I saw from all of them is they compete. How do you get all of your kids to compete? Like there was not very many that I saw out there. And again, I'm not talking that maybe they did take a play off here or there, but 99% of the time they're going hard. How do you guys as a coaching staff, and secondly, how do you as a coaching staff get them to compete and play so hard? And then one of the things I love about coming and watching the freshman and JV game is after I see the varsity practice over, in trickles all the varsity coaches. That's one of my favorite things I see every fall because not every program gets that, and I love it.
What I'm sorry, Jay, what did you say? That second piece?
I said that when I sit there and watch a freshman football game followed by the JV game, you guys are up practicing, and then here comes you, here comes Mark, here comes Lynn, here comes Joel, and all those varsity coaches that just got done putting in time come down there and stand down there and are not just standing there, they're coaching and teaching these young men uh, after they just put in their time with their varsity crew. And that is my favorite thing about your program. I don't know if the other football programs in the world do it, but that right there is my favorite thing about the DeSoto football program.
Yeah, you said it, and I want to touch on that here a little bit more in a second. But the first one, how you get them playing hard, I tell you what, it's kind of like I'll go back to how we approached the weight room this offseason, how hard our kids work, and they show up consistently, and they step in that door from the first second they walk into the time they leave from the rack in the front to the rack in the back. We moved weight and worked in as intense as I've ever seen a group in DeSoto work this year. We've always had groups that do a really good job of this, and they show up consistently for football. Like there's in the summertime, like, I'll be honest with you, if there's a kid that doesn't show up and there's no communication, the entire team runs for that kid. And what we got to do with that, though, is just make sure that we understand what kind of message we send to that kid. It's like, it's not we're going to call them up and bully them and harass them. We're like, hey, what kind of support do you need? Do you need me to call you? Do you need me to wake you up? We got to be very refined with that message. But we have very few of those. And same thing with kids that just no show, miss practice. I don't know. I'll be completely honest with you. If I had one this year, we have 115 kids. So what I think this really is a reflection of is these kids that play so hard and do these things is being a part of a great community with great parents. Because you can only bring kids so far. Like we can preach these things, these kids, and talk about playing hard and giving great effort. And we do preach a lot about representing our school and our community at the highest level. And our kids buy in, and they buy in because they got great families. And I think that's a big part of it. They come from solid foundations. That we can preach these things, but it only works if it's getting reinforced at home. If you're going to do something, do it 100%. And I think we have a lot of parents that do that, and we're blessed in that manner. And then the second piece you talked about was those coaches coming down. Like, I'll tell you what, if you want to see the most intense and most passionate you'll ever see, Coach Byers and Coach Thamert. They're both, coaches in their, I'll be honest with you, in the early 50s. They're been around a while. The most passionate you'll see those guys. If they have an opportunity to go coach the freshmen, you will not see those guys more excited about coaching youth. And I love it. And like if we get done there, we have our film after school on Mondays, and then we go outside. We do our walkthroughs. We might do 7-on-7. We do our conditioning. Once it's done, Tom will get in his vehicle and he'll drive to wherever they're at. You don't see coaches doing that. Lynn Hoffman will do the same thing. And if it's a striking distance, I'll go to Baser, but you don't see coaches do that. But they will do that. They take tremendous pride in those kids. That one thing I can't figure out. I love it. I don't know where. I think it's just a sign of a veteran coach because you get a lot of new young coaches in your program, and they're like, I want to work with the varsity. They're always going to try to find that way to get to the varsity level, even though they do take pride in what their groups are doing. They love coming to the varsity. But those guys love working with those freshmen. If they got a 10-minute window to go down there and coach, they're coaching their tails off. Like you're trying to call them over to get ready for a varsity session, and they want to stay and keep investing in those young kids. And I think it just shows you got some coaches that are wired the correct way and care a lot about the development of your program and understand how things work. And yeah, I'm very grateful to those guys.
All right. So this is the quick hitters, and these are the questions that I enjoy. This first one's the questions every coach has hated. And so I think I know how this one's going to get answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Give me 5 or 6 of your all-time Brian King coach football players.
Okay. I'm glad you gave me 6. This is one you're hesitant to answer because you're always going to leave somebody out. But I'm going to give you a list. And as I'm giving you the list, I'm going to give you a complete leader player list, like a person who did everything. Not everything. All phases did it well. As an athlete, as a student athlete, how they prepared, how they led. Those are the guys there's some guys that stood out to me. The number one is I got to put on there is Jack Barger. And he graduated. He was 2017 football season, 2018 graduate. He was a 30-plus ACT, 4.0 GPA guy. He composed his own music on the piano. And he'd play for retirement homes or a Sunday school, like whatever else. He's just a well-rounded, Coach Hoffman calls him Renaissance man. But when he got on a bus to go to a football game, I remember his sophomore year, he's going to start linebacker. He sat on the bus, and he's beating his head on the back of the seat the entire ride there. And then we got on the field, he was an absolute wrecking machine. And that kid did not miss a morning weight session in 3 years. One of the best leaders I've ever coached. Was an absolute animal linebacker. He would play running back as well. He'd block in a goal line package, one of the most physical blockers you've ever seen. He went on to Emporia State. He was a captain for Emporia State, so he took that leadership there. But the reason this is the main reason I'm going to tell you why I picked him. So his senior year, we have our workouts. We do our morning weights. We have our practice on the football field. And it'd be done, and he'd go grab 6 freshmen taking a breakfast. They'd eat breakfast, go in the gym. He'd go shoot baskets with them. They get into that. He'd come to the weight room and see if they could find some room back the rack or in the turf room to do some extra work. And no one told him to do this. He did it the entire summer. And those freshmen were Jackson Miller, Austin Rosetta, Garrett Kellner, Hayden Henderson. I mentioned Tyson Pretty. Like that was the group. Maybe Austin Tabor in there. And the impact that he had, no one told him to do it. He was just that type of leader. And I don't know if I've seen a competitor as passionate as that kid was. So that's the first guy I'm going to mention.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is a cool story. Then that leads into the next one. So I just mentioned was Jackson Miller. So we talked about Jack as a leader. Jackson Miller is one of the best competitors you'll ever see. I think he might have lost like one UKC game as a starting quarterback. He started as a sophomore, started as a junior, started as a senior. His ability to read a runner offense. Again, his dad was head coach, Bill, and knew a lot about our offense as well. But he was, again, the starting quarterback in the Shrine Bowl, which was a pretty awesome honor for him. But this shirt, I don't know if you can see it on camera screen, that's Jackson. And we did our Legend Series shirts this year, and he was one of them. We'll talk about another one here in a second. And the criteria for that for this first year is going to be guys that were all-state in 3 sports. And he was actually all-state in 4 because he was an all-state in football. In basketball, he was an extreme competitor. I remember we played Pittsburgh up here in basketball, and there was a loose ball. And I remember going at a full sprint and laying out and sliding for this loose ball. It was one of the best plays I've seen a player make in basketball. And goes to baseball and all-state kid as well. We play Mill Valley at Lawrence Free State in like a regional championship game. And I watched him track a ball down in left center that no one I've ever seen at DeSoto could make this play, but Jackson made it. And then that year he ran track part-time when baseball schedule would allow, ran the 100, and he went to state and he got 3rd in state in the 100-meter dash at 5A level. That year he ran the 100, got 3rd, walked across the parking lot, played baseball at Wichita State that same day. So he's my number 2. All right. 3, I guess I'll just go with my next guy, the other Legend Series shirt guy. Legend Series shirt was Jaden Lang. Obviously just graduated last year, but I don't know if I've seen I've not coached a tailback as athletic as Jaden Lang. And he did not start playing football until his freshman year in high school. And as a sophomore, he takes the reins as a tailback, and he averages over 10 yards a carry. And he does that again his junior year and his senior year. So his 3-year average was over 10 yards a carry. Was an absolute stud. I don't know if I've seen a talent like him. And then in basketball, gets all-state recognition. And then he was a state champ in the 4x1 in track. But the reason I chose Jaden, he's the most humble guy you'll ever meet. Everybody looked up to him. Everybody thought the world of him. But he never let it get to his head. He's just Jaden. and he was always going to be a leader. He worked hard in the weight room. His junior year going to senior year, he's starting to get recruited quite a bit, and he's gaining weight through basketball season. Now, you don't see it very often. Well, come to find out, practice get over. You go to Coach Bell, and he's like, "Hey, Coach, let me in that weight room." So he'd let him in that weight room. He'd be working out at night after practice. Like, he was a grinder. I don't think people realize how hard of a worker he was and how humble he was, is why I'm selecting him as number 3. He's one of the best athletes we've had, but just the most humble kid you ever meet. I think the world of him. Next 2 I'll go to is I'm going to put them in the same category as Tyler and Ethan Schultz, the 2 twins. And I'm kind of the same category. And I got to share real quick, the Jaden, Central Missouri State this year. I'm going to go back a little bit. He was supposed to redshirt. He played in 3 games, and he scored a pretty big touchdown against Fort Hays State. Their coach messaged me and goes, "This kid's our best running back as a freshman, by the way." So he's doing some great things, and he's going to have a great career down there. But Ethan and Tyler, just it's kind of the same reason. Those guys were absolute grinders. They were the first guys to show up. They were the last guys to leave. Tyler's one of the most powerful runners we've had at DeSoto High School. He led the league in rushing, the conference in rushing as a quarterback his senior year. One of the strongest throwing arms you'll see. Ethan as a receiver is kind of the same thing. Double team, triple team. I've seen that guy make plays you'd never see anybody make. He goes into basketball season. Those 2 guys were animals. What I loved about them, they could match up with your fastest guard. They could match up with your biggest post player because they were that strong. Just absolute animals. And then the story I always tell our kids, because that's their senior year is the year we went to state in basketball. And I go, kids, you remember the time when Tyler broke his foot in the playoffs of basketball? And they look at me with this blank stare because they remember the run. They go, "No, we don't, Coach." I go, because he kept playing on it. He had a stress fracture in his foot. He played on it all the way through the state tournament. And then he ran track on that same broken foot, and he qualified and placed at state on that broken foot. Those 2 are wired differently. So they go to Emporia State, and he led the conference in interceptions last year, was all conference. So second team all conference this year, Tyler. Then Ethan's right there. He had a little PCL sprain, but he's doing equally as well. They have an off-season. I guess they have like 120 kids on their team, but they recruit teams in the off-season for their training. They're going to have teams, and they're picking the top 3 every single time because they're the first guys to show up and the last guys to leave. So I got those 2 in there. Marshall Kellner was the only top 11 player that we've ever had at DeSoto High School. So top 11 player in the state of Kansas. They only select 11 in 2017 here in that recognition. He was an absolute bulldozer, road grader on the O-line for us. He was a kid that started since his sophomore year. He's got our career pancakes record. This kid is also with Jack, who did not miss a morning weight session in 3 years. And went on to K-State, and now an engineer. So he'd be on that list. And then the last one I'm going to mention is Shane Watts. And that kid is an absolute grinder. And again, wired differently. Phenomenal safety for us. One of the best open field tacklers I've seen. His work ethic was just absolutely unreal. He goes to Hayes as a walk-on, and he's playing safety, and he's playing special teams. So he ended up earning a scholarship. And then going into his junior year, he asked the coaches to move to running backs. He thought he'd have a chance to compete for that position. And the coaches go, "Shane, I don't think we didn't offer you that scholarship. We give you that money to be a running back. We did as a safety and a special teams player. So if you do that, we're going to pull your scholarship." And he goes, "Well, I just know I could think how he's thinking here." He goes, "Well, I trust myself enough. I know how this is going to work out." He goes, "That's fine." So that offseason, Fort Hays coaches come by recruiting kids. And they go, "Coach, Shane has been breaking into the facility to work out at night. He's like jumping fences to get extra workouts in." That next year, he's their starting running back. He had 4 straight games with 100 yards rushing, which they had not had in many years. And then that's his junior year. So his senior year, he led the entire conference. And then he gets signed by the Patriots. And now he's playing professional for football for Canada, end up Canada somewhere. But just an absolute grinder. And these kids are all wired differently. So we've had a lot of great players come through here, but those are just some I'm going to mention.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's like, if I said, "Hey, you got 2 hours, just name all the kids," you would just run through the list of everybody. But we're not doing that. I just wanted to give a list of some of the good things that come from the program. And I think I was around for all of those guys except for, I don't know if I really knew Jack or Marshall much, but it sounds like if I did come to watch those games, they would have stood out. So I probably did see him. But you've had some phenomenal quarterbacks in your time there that go on to do some amazing things at college, that like Jackson if I'm not mistaken, he moved to slot or running back, and then Tyler was your quarterback, and now he's a starting safety in Division II. So, but yeah, all right. Well, let's flip it. In your number of years here at DeSoto, who are some of the 5 or 6 best players that you've ever had to coach against and try to figure out how to stop?
Yeah. The first one I'm going to mention is the first game I ever coached at DeSoto, and I wasn't the head coach at the time, but I'm going to use this. It was my first year when I was assistant under Tom Byers, my first 4 years. My first game we played was against Gardner Edgerton, and it was Bubba Starling. And I show up, and I'm kind of new to the area, and these kids, our high school kids, are talking about this Bubba Starling kid from Gardner, and he's 6'5", and he's 200 pounds, and he runs a 4.40, and kids tend to embellish. But anyhow, they snap the ball. Bubba rolls out the pocket, comes down our sideline right in front of me. And I go, well, they weren't embellishing this time. This is a 4.40. And then that game, he rolls the right hash, throws across his body. It's 50 yards in the air. Like, I'd never seen anything like that kid. And we played him in basketball that year, and he was throwing baseline alley-oops to him. He's dunking back, reverse dunking, tomahawk dunking coming down the lane. And then that spring in baseball, he's 92 to 94 off the mound. Like, I've never seen an athlete like that kid. So that would probably be my number one. Another kid, it was I think it was Jafar Armstrong. Miege went on to Notre Dame. We played that kid. And I just never seen a kid that we had so many angles on where he just took the edge anyway. Just the straight line speed he had and size, he was absolutely unbelievable. Malik Benson played for Lansing. We played him when Jackson Miller and that group was a senior up at Lansing, and all of a sudden they run this waggle pass, a reverse out, and this receiver comes across the middle with this deep post, and they hit us over the top. And I'm feeling really good about it. So we have this kid, Zach Switzer, who's playing corner, who's a burner. He's in the state champion 4x1 team. I'm like, how in the world do you get past Zach? And so then they do it again, burn us over the top. And we kind of figured out who Malik Benson was. To Zach's credit, he made an adjustment. It didn't happen in the second half. But that kid was like a 24-foot long jumper, absolute stud. We played Garrett Griffin. He's from Lewisburg. The year they won state, he was a junior. And the next year as a senior, I think we actually beat him. But he was a 6'4", 220-pound tailback that went on to play tight end at the Saints, also played for Air Force, absolute stud. There was a Gabe Cleveland kid from Eudora who's probably just one of the most hard-nosed, tough linebacker fullbacks we've played against. Went on to Emporia State, was a captain. I think he's an all-conference guy up there as well. But he played half his senior year without an ACL. This is one of the toughest kids you'll ever see. They had some runs where they went to the state championship game in 4A, and he was part of that. Trent Holton went on to play at K-State linebacker. And this is a funny story because I played in the Shrine Bowl under Brooks Barta, and I used to coach at Royal Valley my first few years coaching. And we had Holton in our conference in the Big Seven. And I knew Brooks had always talked to him. And he'd always, I don't know, you go talk to him like, hey, Brooks, how you doing? He goes, oh, we're good, but you're going to kick our butt tonight. You got this, that, or the other. And deep down, he knows they're really good. Well, that year we go down to play him, and Trent's the senior. I go, Brooks, how you doing? He goes, good. He goes, and this is week 1. He goes, I think we're going to win state this year. And I go, oh no, what does he have? Because that's never how Brooks approaches things. And they had Trent Tankin and a Ewing kid that were studs, but Tankin was an absolute beast. And then O-line, there's a Burns kid from Miege, and I hope I don't screw this up. I think it was Jake Burns. There was their center of the year we played in 2017, was an absolute beast. In a center, if you had an odd front, you always got to snap the ball and handle that nose guard. And it didn't matter who they played. You see that kid just dominating. I've never seen the linemen as good as that kid, especially center. And then as far as D linemen, I don't want to forget this one, because I coached this kid in the Shrine Bowl as well. Gosh dang it. Might have to leave one out. Oh, Ethan Kramer, Mill Valley.
Yeah.
He's an multi-time heavyweight champ, but I just don't – the kid that's that physical on the defensive front, I don't think I've seen a kid that physical. And then I coached him in the Shrine Bowl that year as well. And one thing I respected about him, you had a morning breakfast or you had any meeting, he was the first guy there. So that's kind of my list of kids that we've played against.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Bangle, and he was I think the O-line coach when Ethan was at Mill Valley, and he was one of the ones he raved about. I was like, that was the first kid I'd seen at this higher level, 5, 6A, that he was a two-way player. He played offensive and defensive line. He was on every special team. He just never came off the field, and he wasn't a small guy either. So I was super impressed when I watched that. But so you were a running back, but I'm not going to hold you to that for this next question. Who are some of your all-time favorite NFL players?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get a running back list probably.
I figured I might be, but I just wanted to give you that out just in case you didn't want to.
Yeah, and you're gonna get a multi-sport athlete type list too. But Jim Thorpe would be one of mine. Bo Jackson, and I'll go with Jim Thorpe. Again, I love that guy growing up. Read a lot of books on him. I've read one called Undefeated about his life, which is pretty unique because he's a gold medalist in the pentathlon and decathlon. That year he won that gold medal. People don't realize he played center field. They had tried baseball in the Olympics that year. He played center field in that game. And he's the first president of the AFL, which ended up being in the NFL, and just one of the best athletes ever walked the planet. And then Bo Jackson, I put him in that same category. I think his body of work was small, but what he did during that body of work was absolutely unreal, with over 5.5 yards of carry and just an absolute all-around athlete. And I got a chance to meet him at a spring training one year, which was absolutely awesome. I visit with him a little bit about some things he had going on, which was pretty awesome for me. I'll never forget. John Riggins is another one of mine. I don't know how many people would know him. He was a Super Bowl MVP in 1985 for the Redskins, or I think it was 85 for the Redskins. He came from Centralia, Kansas. He was 6'2", 225. They called him the Diesel. But you'd hear stories, because Centralia's they're our big rivalry, 20 minutes from Onega. But you'd hear stories about that guy that were just unreal growing up. And he's a very colorful individual as well. Went to KU, had a great career there, and went to the Jets, and then played for the Redskins. He had more rushing yards in his 30s than any other running back at the time. But again, the state champion at 6'2", 225 in the mid-60s for the state of Kansas, back when the classifications were different. Like, it was like they'd only have one or two classifications. He was the fastest guy in the state in the 100-yard dash. But one of the stories I'd heard, my coach and Coach Lee played with him at Centralia, and said that he was at a track meet one time. I'm probably butchered the story, but he goes to check in for long jump, and the guy running the meet looks at him and he thinks he's a thrower, because John goes, "This pit's not long enough. I'm going to jump out of this pit." And the guy just kind of laughs at me, because "You're like a shot put thrower. What are you talking about?" And then John comes down the runway, jumps out of the pit, and breaks his arm. But you'd hear stories like this all the time about John Riggins wherever you go. Just an absolute stud. And then the last three, Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, and you can put them any order you want. Those are the top three running backs that ever played the game, in my opinion. But that's my six.
Man, that's a good list. And I'm even gonna use that to rub it in my brother's face, because he's an Emmitt Smith guy and he didn't make the list. So Coach King said it. Emmitt's not good enough. That's what I'm going to tell him. So, well, Coach, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I have nothing but admiration for what you do for the DeSoto community and all the youth. And I've seen the strength. James is not by any means a strong kid, as far as, like, if you were to put a bunch of weight on there, he's not going to squat 300 or anything crazy, but I can tell he's stronger when he grabs a hold of me. I can still beat him. Don't worry. I can still take him down. But I can see what you're doing for all athletes, and not even just the athletes, all kids at DeSoto, and even younger. LT, what you guys have done at LT with the weight program has been a blessing, and both my kids are benefiting from that. So thank you for everything, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate you and the time you invest in those kids at LT as well, because you've coached my son and did a phenomenal job, and we're lucky to have you there as well. So thank you very much, Jake.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful night, Coach. Thank you.
You too.